All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, the 1st of March, 2013. We're already through 2 months, and this is the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Commission meeting scheduled for today. It's a couple minutes after 9. We're getting started, and I see by the roll call we have John Salzman. The judge is not with us yet. Haven't heard whether he's not going to be here today. Well, that's good to know. Eric, we're glad to see you. Vice Chairman Lee. I want to introduce everybody to all of you who don't know her. Nicole Bunker Henderson is sitting in for Jim Krausen today. Of course, I'm Bob Wilson, Linda, Dick, and Peter, and Lee and Audrey are all here. And then Nicole is sitting in for Jim Krausen with the Attorney General's office because he had a conflict. And for those of you who don't know and haven't been following us for some time, Nicole was Jim's assistant when we first started out operating in 2009, and for a few years she left to go have a kid who's now 18 months old, so it's been that long. And she's doing other things at the AG's office, but she's very familiar with our history and with the issues. And Nicole, welcome. We're glad that you can make it this morning. I'm glad to see her.
Thank you.
Okay, that's who we are. So we'll be 7 today. I see Ms. Madru in the back, and is there anybody else who's here representing an official or an elected official? No, Betsy, you seem to be you're it? But you're welcome. And then, are there any press people here this morning? Because I have this habit of introducing people representing the press associations just to thank you if they are here for what they do. Okay, and that's the first 3 items on our agenda, so they went by pretty rapidly. The next thing is public comment. And Ms. Haddon, I know, submitted some comments to us in email form yesterday evening, and Karen, I presume you would want to mention those and talk about them this morning, and anything else, you have a few minutes to do that. In this portion, we're opening the floor, if you will. We have an agenda item for anybody who wants to talk to us about anything, whether it's on the agenda or not, and then those people can also register on specific agenda items if they care to address us on those items when they come up. So, Karen, and I don't know if anybody else is going to be here making comments, but certainly Karen will be.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, and I do have a few comments. I won't go into detail. We've submitted them in writing, and there are some specific comments on the individual applications that we'll come to throughout the day. But one thing that's new is that Andrews County, like much of the rest of the state, has had some really high winds this past week. This photo is from Monday in Andrews County. Best I can tell, the accident that's shown here was about 10 miles from the site, something on that order. This was a semi-truck. The roads were wet, and the 50-mile-per-hour winds caused this truck to start sliding. And it broadsided, slid, jackknifed, and hit a telephone pole. Well, fortunately, nobody got hurt. The point that I would like to raise once again, and you'll see in this packet that in the region there have been numerous very serious accidents. For a little while in Midland, which is 40 miles from Andrews, there were 6 deaths, 1 death every 6 days at the start of this year, average. So they've been having some problems. The point is, I know this is not on your shoulders to make sure that we get some transportation routes in place, but they do need to happen. We're going to have increased number of trucks going out there. If this was a truck with radioactive waste, and I assume it's not, although nobody said what it was carrying, that we do need to get that in place. And my request to you would be to fire off a letter to the Department of State Health Services and urge them to get on with it. Short of that, I would urge you not to approve applications until we can get this straight. I think it'd be a horrible scenario if we did have radioactive waste in a similar accident. There's numerous different articles in here to this effect. There have also been fires in the region. One just this past week was about 8 acres that were burned, and in 2011 there were 90,000 acres burned in neighboring Lee County, and I'm sure there were additional acres burned in Andrews County. I don't have that data. But
your reference to Lee County is Lee County, New Mexico.
Yes, exactly. So thank you. And I would urge that you ask WCS what, if anything, they're doing, if they're doing any special preparations, just to make sure that they don't have any fire problems.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Haddon from the commissioners? Okay. Thank you. I would note that Richard Ratliff is here with the Department of State Health Services, so he's heard your presentation also this morning. All right. Good morning. Is there anybody else who cares to address us, gentlemen? Rod, welcome.
My name is Rod Balcher. I'm the president of WCS, and just to address some of the points Ms. Haddon brought up, we have taken 4 shipments this week through the snow and weather and things out there, and all were incident-free. We've taken approximately 100 shipments today. All have been incident-free, so we're happy to announce that. The transportation teams and drivers and the skills, I guess, they possess are routinely reviewed. They do this. They're the best in class. You have to have special qualifications to be qualified to drive some of these trucks and transportation routes and things like that. We also appreciate DSHS for the rigor they go through in evaluating companies to qualify them as eligible shippers to our site. As far as fire, Andrews County last year, approximately a third of the county had wildfires in it. It was a very concerning item. Obviously, it's very dry in the area, and we expect that there could be additional fire dangers this year. Last year, in preparation for some of that, we did create a large firewall barrier where we basically got rid of plants, shrubs, and mesquites around the perimeter of the facility. We also have our own brush fighting truck, and then we also have agreements with both the Eunice, New Mexico, and Andrews County fire departments and things like that. So we're very geared up for any kind of response we'd need. We also have lots of heavy equipment and machinery on site if there was some kind of wildfire that needed our assistance.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Dick?
When you say you create a firewall, what?
So we want to make sure that if there is a fire that's coming toward the site, there's a wall basically that fire won't be able to get across. And so by clearing out brush and other things that could catch fire, we've created a wall to prevent that fire from kind of crossing that. And so this was approximately a 50 to 100 foot wide path near the highway access and along state line roads and things. So if it did cross, it wouldn't get into the areas where we have waste operations and employees.
Are there weather conditions under which you don't take delivery, or is that?
We definitely have weather conditions where we don't do disposal operations. If we got high winds, gusts of over 25 miles an hour, I think it is, we don't do any kind of crane lifts or anything like that. We do have TCQ resident inspectors on site, and so if there is some kind of situation where they deemed it inadvisable, we would also, obviously take guidance from that as well. But we do have certain safety requirements and parameters where we won't do disposal operations. We would, in any event, let that truck come into our property and have a safe haven for that, even if we're not going to unload it. We want to make sure it's not on the highway. A lot of the transportation accidents in that region, there's an incredible amount of oil and gas traffic and tanker rigs and things like that, and we just want to make sure radioactive trucks have a safe place to be, so our site will be open to take them whenever they arrive at that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balcher. Is there anyone else who generally wishes to just speak to us about something that's on their mind about Compact Commission activities? Well, I don't see anybody, so next is item 5, discussion and possible action with respect to the question of when a waste becomes a waste for purposes of applicability of Commission rules. Mr. Salzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to report that a group of individuals met last week to talk about this issue. We had TCEQ, Department of State Health Services, myself, and Lee and Audrey, and we met to talk about sort of the aspects of this question. We are working on a draft document. I'll call it a white paper that we hope to get to at least a reasonable stage so that we could submit it for public comment and that kind of thing. I can tell you the gist of our discussions were how we could move forward with implementing what the TCEQ form that exists. I believe it's form 20225, if I have the form number correct. But that document talks about who a waste generator would be, and so that's sort of the what we focused on. Who would a waste generator be, and who would need to complete that paperwork. I think we're getting close to coming to a consensus on what the group believes. We also talked about, prior to the facility opening in 2012, late April 2012, that the paperwork that exists today didn't necessarily exist then. That would require signatures by who the waste generator is and certain documents. From the time that Barnwell stopped accepting waste, which was in 2008, until the WCS site opened in 2012, there was clearly a period of time there where many people who use radioactive materials they had no place to send their waste, and some of them had field sources that they didn't need anymore, didn't want anymore, and perhaps didn't even have a good place to store. So regulators provided some consideration to various entities, whether they were brokers or source manufacturers, to take back materials so that they would have a safe place to be. So as a group, one of the things that we're considering is for these sources that were perhaps moving between a user and perhaps somebody who could store that source for a period of time, not requiring perhaps the same kind of paperwork for some of those, I guess you could say, older sources. I think there's a way that we can do that. I would point to the review that we did for both Qualtech and the one that was performed for RAM Services, which I believe is on the agenda today. And it's acknowledged that if a company took a source back 4 or 5 years ago, obviously they couldn't get a piece of paper filled out that didn't get invented or didn't become a form until just recently. So I think in that same vein, as a group, we're trying to wrestle with what kind of language we could use and what kind of documents would be acceptable to show where a source came from. We might not have the signature, perhaps, of the last entity that used that source, but we would have an idea of where it came from. And I guess the crux of the issue is, and the group, I think, came to consensus that we have to comply with the law, which says we can't take any international waste. So when a source is going to be received, we have to have some sort of document or proof that source didn't come from a foreign country, a company that in Mexico or Saudi Arabia or something like that. And then the other factor is for sources or radioactive waste that's going to be received, if it comes from Maine, not Maine anymore. If it comes from Texas or Vermont, then that's in compact and we'll go with in compact rates. Any source or radioactive materials that were coming from any of the other states, would need to pay that additional 20%. So to me, those are the two tests, if you will, that we're trying to figure a way to write into any kind of policy or rule or whatever form this document might eventually take. And I'm pretty confident that within the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll have a draft, and again I'll just call it a white paper that would sort of lay this out, that we could hopefully get feedback on. So I think we're actually making very good progress, and I think it will be, when it's eventually put out there, it'll be a document that's reasonable. I think it's fair, and I think it will implement that we can't take international waste, and that if it's not from Texas or Vermont, you have to pay the 20% surcharge.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners, Mr. Salzman, at this time? John, I will observe that one of the ex officio or non-compact commission members of your committee is Ken Krieger, as I recall. And Ken sent me some comments this past week. He was not able to be here. Has he sent those to you also?
No, sir.
All right. I'll make sure you get those. And I also heard from a lady named Doris Bryan, who many of you know, who's in the business of handling these sources, and she may also have some comments. And for those of you who care to understand, what we're doing is just having an exploratory discussion at this point about the question of when does waste become a waste for purposes that Mr. Salzman just enunciated very, very clearly. We just need to find out whether it's in compact or not in compact, and we need to prohibit out of the country generated waste from coming in. So we're trying to differentiate and set up rules for ourselves and in conjunction with TCEQ on when we can figure this out to make the actions, the practical actions associated with waste disposal in compact track the legislative requirements in the Compact Commission rules. And John, I'm going to suggest when you have something you think is white paper, we probably should submit that to our council to see whether or not they would, how we're going to be treating that. Is it going to be treated as a rulemaking or as an interpretation, or what we will do at that point? Because there's a fine line sometimes, and I'm sure Ms. Bunker-Henderson can correct me if I speak incorrectly about a policy decision or a rule interpretation and actual rulemaking, and we need to see that we're legal on whatever we end up doing. It's initially, I think we're working on an interpretation, but it may be that we need to turn it into a rulemaking so we have clear, defined rules. And Charles, I assume that if we do that, y'all will be participating with us in trying to approach it the same way, because we've all got the same interest and we want to be consistent. All right. Any other comments or questions about this agenda item, Mr. Lee?
Mr. Chairman, one other question. John, how do you foresee the entities like TCEQ that is developing the draft with you? Is their game plan to use it also in their work that they perform, their fiduciary responsibilities, or is this strictly going to be something that the Compact Commission is going to use?
Well, without speaking for TCEQ and the Department of State Health Services, that's one of the things we talked about, that hopefully the document that we develop would be used by all three entities as, I'll just use the sort of generic term, guidance, and we would all use that same guidance when it comes to making a decision about where waste came from and who was the generator. So I'm hopeful that we would all be essentially using that same document, and I think that's very likely to be the outcome.
So basically we're trying to set some policy that all three could use, and then if the Compact Commission wanted to either make it a rule or some other document, or TCEQ want to do something different with it, at least we're coming from the same common base to begin with, and then we could take it and do whatever we would choose to do with it.
That's how I see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I will also note that this was an item for discussion at the Radiation Advisory Board meeting held a couple of weeks ago, and Mr. Krieger was there, and he brought it up before the board, and that was part of the reason he was soliciting comments through the Radiation Advisory Board about input into the same question. I'll observe again that it's amazing to me that this is not a whole lot of queries or a lot of volume that goes to our site, but we're spending a whole lot of time talking about it because of basically the bookkeeping issues involved, whether it's in compact or out of compact, and the implications that flow from that. We're not really talking about any great quantity of queries being consumed under the license. It's just a bookkeeping and charge thing that WCS has to be careful about, and we have to be careful about, TCQ has to be careful about, because we're differentiating between in-compact and out-of-compact waste. All right. And with that, unless there are other questions, so that's item 5, and we're moving right along. Next is item 6, consideration and possible action on reduction of queries may be disposed of at the compact facility by several agreement holders. And Ms. Morris, I think you were looking at this for us.
Yes, we have our disposal allocation committee, and it had looked to see, at the last meeting we reported that we appears we're going to have a lot less queries than we originally anticipated. So we have some new petitions, some new applications before us today, and the question was, do we have enough room under the 220,000 curie cap to be able to approve these, even though we had the other approvals already out for the generators that already have approved agreements with the commission. So we essentially, Lee Ng primarily, bless your heart, Lee, okay, contacted the companies with existing agreements, and essentially asked them if they would, well, they had already provided to us if they were going to, the information as to whether they're going to have any, whether they're not going to use all their allocations. So we had a pretty good idea where we stood. So she contacted them, and 2 of the companies agreed to give back the allocations, or at least portions of the allocations. So essentially, we have a number of items on our agenda for everyone with existing signed agreements right now. But I don't feel like we need to address all of them, because we found that 2 of them will be sufficient to cover all the queries we'll need for the remaining of this operational year. So essentially, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, agreed to give back 40,000 queries, and Zion Solutions, 5,000. Our council generated an amendment form, and Lee has put the data into that. So now we have 2 amendment forms, ready to be recommended for approval by the commission and signed by our chair. So that's essentially where we are. We can have signed these 2 agreements, and it will return essentially 45,000 queries, which will cover any of the petitions we have before us today.
All right, okay. And Mr. Balter, can I ask you a couple of questions about this? I assume that this will work into your scheduling for this future, for projected disposal in the first operational year. And I hate to hit you with a question out of the blue, but
no, we were aware that both TVA and Zion would not ship as many queries as they had under import agreements. We had some concern that we wanted to make sure all of these applications that were listed in the agenda did not get taken back to as close as possible. We wanted there to be some flexibility if a shipment was going to be a couple of queries over or something like that, that it didn't disrupt an entire shipment. But I think based on the representations you receive from those companies and their shipping expectations and things, that we would be okay with this.
All right. In essence, we're revising agreements that we had in place up to get close to the limit of 220,000 queries during the first operational year to allow people who did not have agreements with us room for them to dispose of. And the second part of the question is, if we do these revisions, do you anticipate that there will be enough queries available so if somebody not having a current agreement with us wants to ship to you, there will be an opportunity for them to do that?
We do.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Then as long as we're only considering two of them, the first one is 6D, Tennessee Valley Authority, and what's the proposal on that one?
The amendment request is that Article 2KB is amended to read in their import agreement that the waste item B, the waste radioactivity and curies, they'll be allowed to dispose of 110,000 curies. So that is a reduction by 40,000 curies.
Instead of 150,000?
Yes.
Under that particular
Yes.
agreement? All right. Do you want to make a motion to make that amendment?
I guess I can. So I move that the Commission approve this amendment request between Tennessee Valley Authority and the Commission to have their amended allowable quantity for disposal as 110,000 curies for operational year 1.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. There are all sorts of people seconding that motion. And I take it that you do have communications from TVA indicating that they're giving their consent
Yes,
to
we
this.
do.
Yes, sir.
And here he comes.
Good morning. My name is Brian Wood. I'm with Tennessee Valley Authority. I'm the program manager for radioactive waste. Yes, we do agree to give back 40,000 curies on the irradiated hardware, which is the 200700, I believe. Is that correctly? I can't remember if it's 7 or 8.
It is 7.
And then 8, we're going to keep the 2,000 curies for resins. Just wanted to make sure that we had that clear.
Yeah, we're only amending the one agreement as far as I can tell.
Good.
We're not amending both of them.
Good. Thanks.
And thank you for your help to us in doing this.
I'd like to comment that the generators we've been dealing with have been very cooperative.
As part of the process, I think there was a letter generated to everybody who had import agreements with us, asking them to disclose to us their shipping and plans and quantification of those, so we could go out to them and form some initial, make some initial recommendations about making room, if room was available, to determine if other people wanted to ship, we could do that. And we got cooperation, I think, from everybody. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion to amend the agreement to 0007 with, I think that's the only agreement we're amending. We're amending 8 also.
For TVA.
For TVA, yes. 2007 for 0007 for TVA. I think I've got it right now. And we're not amending 8.
You are correct.
All right. That's the motion, to amend it so that it says 110 rather than 150,000 curies. And there's been a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. We'll amend that agreement, and I understand that you've got one prepared, and I'll sign it, and we can and get it out today. The next one we'll consider is item 6G, Zion Solutions, to reduce authorization curies in agreement number 20011. And again, Ms. Morris.
Yes, the amendment is to reduce the allowed quantity to 13,000 curies. As the chair suggests, this is between Zion Solutions and the Commission, and it is agreement 11, so to 13,000 curies. Do we have anyone here from Zion? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Dan Schrum. I work for Energy Solutions, but I can speak on behalf of Zion. And we're willing to give up the 5,000. We're still segmenting, and it's taking longer than we thought. So more than happy to provide that to somebody else.
All right, and you still have curies left in case you do segment and want to ship something.
Yes.
This year,
sir.
so the 5,000 is,
Mm-hmm.
You can afford to let us play with and make available to other people if they could use it.
Well, we were at the buffet, and our eyes are bigger than our... Anyway, yes, sir.
Very good. And Thank you very much for your cooperation. Is there anybody else want to comment about this item? Okay, Ms. Morris.
I move that agreement 200011 be amended between Zion Solutions and the Commission, that the total amount of curies allowed to be disposed of in operation year 1 read 13,000 curies. This is a reduction of 5,000 from the original agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, you've heard the motion and second. Is there any questions or discussion among Commission members? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And let me just observe that there are several other items, Bionomics, Ecology Services, Nebraska Public Power, Studesvik, Thomas Gray and Associates, other items under 6. And Ms. Morris, if I understood you correctly, there's no need to consider those amendments at this meeting. Is that correct?
No, we're not going to pursue amendment.
All right. Are there any questions from the Commission about that? So we just won't act on, we'll just, I don't think we need to move the table. We just not act on those particular applications at this time. All right. Thank you very much. And we've approved the 2 changes in agreements, and we'll sign those and see if we can get them out today. And that means we can now consider item 7. We have applications and proposed agreements for importation of low-level radioactive waste from 4 entities. The first is American Airlines, and it would be agreement number 1-002600. And who's going to take this on for me, John? Is that you? All right, Mr. Salzman.
Mr. Chairman, the technical committee has reviewed an application from American Airlines, that's 1-0026-00, to import sealed sources from the state of Oklahoma. They're requesting 75 cubic feet and 20,000 curies. They are acting as the generator of this material, and to my knowledge, I think they probably will eventually use a broker or shipper to send the waste to WCS. They did receive approval. The compact facility operator received approval to dispose of the waste from TCQ in a letter dated February 14, 2013. Waste is coming from Oklahoma, and they just recently had their issue fixed, and they appear on the Central Compact's approved export list. They do it different in the Central Compact than some other compacts. They are approved to export that waste. I will note that American is requesting the disposal of the material, their allocation be for the first operational year. And I would also note that to our knowledge, they have no other place to send this material. And the technical committee has recommended, put forth this application recommending that we approve it.
Thank you. As I recall, Mr. Sullivan, these are the content of the material, you call them sealed sources, but they're exit signs that no longer meet federal airworthiness requirements for aircraft exit signs.
That's correct. They're considered sealed sources, but they are glass ampules containing, it depends on the actual individual ampule, but they can be anywhere from 1 to as many as 6 curies in each glass ampule. And basically they're used to generate via the energy emitted by the tritium and the fluorescent material. They generate light, so that in a situation where you didn't have electricity on a plane, the exit sign would still be illuminated. People would know which way to go.
All right, thank you. Are there questions from any of the commissioners, first of all? Is there anybody, Ms. Haddon, you said that you wish to comment about this particular item?
Thank you. I'm Karen Haddon with Seed Coalition. Regarding this application, I was a little bit, well, I have a question, basically. I was a little bit confused. If each bulb or whatever has like 1 to 6 curies, and this is 75 square feet, I was wondering
Cubic feet.
Yeah, cubic feet, I'm sorry. Thank you. That I will correct that in my notes, by the way. Thank you. And somehow we're ending up with 20,000 curies. I was wondering if that's right, and if it's really that intensely radioactive, and if there are any other radionuclides besides the tritium present.
Actually, the radioisotope of choice for these types of devices is tritium, and they're the glass ampules. If you've ever seen an exit sign, each letter is illuminated by an individual glass ampule. So the letter E consists of 4 ampules, 1 going down and 3 across. So and they are quite radioactive in terms of the amount that's in each vial. And you might initially think that 75 cubic feet is not a lot, but that's 10 drums, 10 55-gallon drums, and these glass ampules are about the size of my pinky, so they're actually relatively small, and that one vial might contain 6 curies. So you could very easily get 20,000 curies into 10 drums.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I would note, as a matter of trivia, that I had some. American Airlines was kind enough to come in and discuss this with us before they even submitted this application, and we appreciate the fact that they did that. But also note that they said correctly that sometimes these exit signs wind up in strange places, like local landfills, and we're better off having them go to the low-level radioactive waste site that handles and is designed to handle tritium and other radioactive sources, because people are just unaware of how they're built and what they're containing. So I take it, John, you have a motion.
Yes. I make a motion that the Commission approve import application 1-0026-00 from American Airlines Incorporated. The waste to be coming from Oklahoma. It's sealed sources. The waste classification is Class B. The waste form is stable. It has been approved by TCEQ, and that we approve a volume of 75 cubic feet and 20,000 curies, and we approve that for a period from today through April 26, 2013.
All right. That's the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Let me just ask Rod, is the proposed shipping schedule sufficient to get those to you by April 26th? All right. Any other questions of any of the commissioners?
Just out of curiosity, when tritium decays, does it decay into a stable?
Yes.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And if my notes are correct, that's 20,000 curies out of the 45 we freed up a few minutes ago. So we got 25,000 left. Next up is 7B, Duke Energy, 0027. Mr. Salzman again.
Give me just one moment. All right, the technical committee considered an application from Duke Energy, the Brunswick Nuclear Power Plant. That application is 1-0027-00. It was received by the Commission February 1, 2013. It was actually signed by a Duke representative on January 27th. Duke will be acting as the generator and disposer of this material. We have a letter from TCEQ authorizing WCS to dispose of the material from Duke, which is Class B unstable powdered dewatered resin, and that letter was dated February 14, 2013. They are requesting 120.3 cubic feet and 300 curies total radioactivity and 16,200 microcuries of technetium-99. I will note that in the form that they submitted, they actually changed the unit on the technetium-99, so I had to actually call the representative from Duke to confirm, in fact, that they had made a change to our standard submittal form. This waste is coming from the state of North Carolina, and which is not part of the compact, so there's no export authorization required. In addition, the committee is not aware that they have access to another disposal facility for the material, so the committee is recommending that we approve this application.
All right. And you want to make a motion?
Are you going to ask for comments first, or
Questions? You can make the motion.
All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion, and let me change documents. And I would add that, let's confirm, Duke Energy has requested disposal in its second operational year.
Okay.
So I need to change spreadsheets.
Just a minute, Karen. Get the motion, and then we'll have discussion.
I make a motion that we approve the application from Duke Energy Brunswick Nuclear Power Plant. That application number is 1-0027-00. The waste will be from North Carolina. The material will be dewatered powdered resin. The waste classification is Class B, and the waste form is unstable. The material was approved by TCEQ. The volume will be 120.3 cubic feet, I believe, that's correct. 300 curies total radioactivity and 16,200 microcuries of technetium-99 for a period from April 27, 2013 through April 26, 2014.
All right. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any commission discussion, first of all?
I just had one or two questions. They asked for approval of 1 year, and so the year, I think it starts this April 27th.
That's correct. We're starting it at the beginning of the second operational year it makes it easier, clean in that respect.
And when they say estimated curies, do you feel that when we approve this, we're approving a kind of a maximum of 300 curies, or?
Actually, when I called the representative from Duke to ask about the changing of the units, we also talked about that. This is their best estimate of the waste. It's not currently in a container, so they're having to estimate the amount of radioactivity based on plant operations and previous information. But he believes this number is as accurate as they can possibly get without having the waste in the container at this date. And I noted to him...
We've had this issue before, but I'm just wondering supposing they send in 500 curies.
I explained to him that whatever, if anything was approved, that would be a maximum, and that if for whatever reason they thought the volume or the curies or the technetium-99 would go over what was approved, they'd have to apply for an amendment before that material could be shipped.
And just for my information, that doesn't mean that this might be the only agreement we'd have with Duke Energy, for example, as long as we have space curies available, they could apply for a subsequent agreement if they chose to do that, or an amendment.
That's correct.
All right. It's motion made and seconded. Ms. Haddon, you wanted to comment about this?
Yes, briefly. With this application, I'm wondering, first of all, if there's anything besides technetium-99, and why is it considered unstable? Is that just because it's radioactive, still radioactively decaying, or if it's something other than that? And just a question on this one, as opposed to the last one, seems to be not intense on the radioactive content for the volume. And is that typical for dewatered powder resin or not?
Any resin is going to be less in terms of its curies per cubic foot than something like irradiated hardware or something like that. Your question about stable versus unstable, it has to do with the waste form. It has nothing to do with the curies that are in it or the radioactive material. It's purely the physical form of the material. And in this case, dewatered powdered resins are not, unless they were solidified in some fashion, they would be considered unstable. I'm not sure. Did you have another question?
So does that mean any kind of increased risk in handling? What does that mean?
It means that I believe technically, in terms of NRC, any unstable waste has to be a certain number of feet below the cap of the facility. Isn't that correct, Rod?
We have to put it in a stable form, so we'll put it in a concrete canister.
Okay.
Okay, so then, lastly, this is Class B. Are there other radionuclides in these resins? I'm assuming that there are.
I'm quite certain there will be other radionuclides, but again, our form only asks for specifics on 4 radionuclides. Clearly there's other radionuclides because they're requesting 300 curies, and they're only requesting 16,200 microcuries of Tech-99, so there's a lot of other curies in there.
So I guess my last comment would just be a request that eventually we get the forms where we're listing more of what's in there. Thanks.
Well, sure, and as you recall, Ms. Haddon, when we went through the rule development for this, we paid attention to 4 specific radionuclides because of licensing limitations and curiosity, rather than look at all the possible radionuclides and agreements on them. So we have curies and then specific looks at 4 radionuclides.
Looking to the future, when the rules are revisited, I think it really would be helpful to know. I don't think it would be too much of a burden on the generators to go ahead and spell out what they've got in there.
I'm sure you'll be participating with us in the rulemaking proceeding, and we can expect to hear that comment.
Yep.
All right. Is there any other question or discussion from any of the commission members? Hearing none, you've heard the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the importation agreement with Duke for the 2nd operational year, and so we don't need to worry about curies for this year, is approved, and we'll be signing that agreement in due course. Next one, Pacific Gas and Electric Humboldt Bay, is the 3rd one on this particular list of import applications. Mr. Salzman, when you get your computer geared up to the right location.
Mr. Chairman, the technical committee reviewed an application from Pacific Gas and Electric Company's Humboldt Bay Power Plant. That application is 1-0028-00, was received by the Commission February 2013 and signed by the applicant on January 30, 2013. I'll just refer to them as PG&E, but it is worthy to note that this is from Humboldt Bay because we have received other applications from PG&E for other nuclear power plants. They'll be the waste generator and shipping the material to the site. WCS does have a letter from TCEQ dated February 14, 2013 that approves them to dispose of the material, which is Class B and Class C stable irradiated hardware, reactor internals, and resins. The volume of material requested for disposal was 601.5 cubic feet. The total radioactivity is 2,800 curies. It was 3,071 millicuries of carbon-14 and 21,612 microcuries of technetium-99. They have requested disposal for the second year of disposal. And the material is in California, and they do have an export permit that we have a copy of from the Southwestern Compact, and we're not aware that they have access to any other disposal facility for this material. The technical committee is recommending approval of this application.
All right. Before you make the motion now, I'm going to ask for any questions or discussion among the commissioners. Okay. John, we're ready for your motion.
I make a motion that we approve the application from Pacific Gas and Electric Company, Humboldt Bay Power Plant. That's number 1-0028-00. The waste is from California. Waste description is irradiated hardware, reactor internals, and resins. The waste classification is Class B and Class C. The waste form is stable. It was approved by TCEQ. I recommend we approve a volume of 601.5 cubic feet, 2,800 curies total radioactivity, 3,071 millicuries of carbon-14, and 21,612 microcuries of technetium-99 for a period beginning April 27, 2013 through April 26, 2014.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right. The motion has been made and seconded. Let me first ask WCS, you're aware of this and have a contract in place and all that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Hardly recommend approval.
All right. Yes, sir.
Robert Singleton. Karen was called away, so I wanted to ask some questions on her behalf. While the PG&E application attempts to clarify which shipments from the Humboldt Bay nuclear power plant are planned and shipped already and which have been delayed, their description is unclear, and it's hard to tell how it matches up with the requested 601.5 cubic feet and 2,800 curie limit requested. How much of the requested amount is irradiated hardware? How much is reactor internals, and how much is resins? Are the control rod blades included in this allocation, or are they being considered here as irradiated hardware? Other applications have shown high levels of curies for control rod blades, so is the 2,800 curie estimate accurate?
John, you care to respond?
I'm satisfied with the level of information they provided. They have not exceeded their allocation for year one, and this allocation is for year two. It's very clear that they're not asking for any additional volume for year one.
All right. And I would note that we're primarily considered in our application, except for 4 radionuclides, where we only look at total radioactivity, and their description of it will then have to take place on, if I recall this correctly, on the documents, on the shipping.
The shipping paperwork will, for each load of material that's sent to WCS, the detailed shipping paperwork will spell out exact curies, exact radioisotopes, and the specific nature of the waste that's being provided on that shipment for that day.
And are those documents available to the public? Or is this another one of those things we can't see?
I honestly can't tell you whether I know that shipping manifests generally are available eventually through the DOE, I believe through the DOE waste manifest system. I can't think of it has a name, but
So we'll know we'll know the answer to our question several months after the shipment's been shipped?
I'm sorry, what's the name of the system? MIMS. Sorry. So that I believe is publicly accessible, if I'm correct.
But the last question was then we won't see that until after the shipment's already shipped.
I believe that's correct. For security purposes, they would not want to pre-notify the material is going to be en route. That would make it an easy target.
Okay.
And we've had discussions about this before, and we run right into Homeland Security questions when we start talking about this kind of stuff, prior to notification, and they seem to have problems with that. So maybe you should talk to them.
All right.
All right. Questions? Dick?
I'm sorry, but I don't see where these numbers are in this tab. Maybe
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Lee?
missing some pages. Okay.
We went with a new printing company this month because they were easy and cheap. I guess that's why. I'll have to look and see why some of them are missing pages. I didn't know that. I apologize.
This one seems to be missing the pages with the numbers on the side.
I have it.
It's one way we could save money. Obviously, if they don't print everything, then they don't need to charge us quite as much.
I will note that copies of the spreadsheet and everything are available in the commission offices as well. So,
Peter,
They'll have to be more selective.
if you look at the Lee, is the technical review document in the binder? No, okay.
Yeah, we didn't put them in the binders because we usually don't get them authorized until they're already on a plane. So.
Peter, did you have a question?
Yeah. So this is a plant that's being decommissioned?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
And do we know, is all the B and C waste then headed for the site?
To my knowledge, this is the only facility that they have access to for disposal of this kind of waste. So I would assume that it's all the waste they would generate that would be Class B and Class C would have to come to our facility if we were to authorize import applications.
Rod, can you give a sense of the total volume you expect? I'm right, am I not thinking this is the first decommission?
We have a representative, this is Rod Balser, we have a representative from PG&E, so I'll let him speak on behalf of PG&E.
Good morning, William Jason with PG&E Electric. This is PG&E's first nuclear decommissioning. It's a small reactor. It's been shut down since the 1976 timeframe and been in safe store during that period of time. So as far as the petition, it's essentially 6 remaining liner shipments and 2 resin shipments over the course of this physical year. That's both the existing first year and second year. That's our total need. This is very important to us to meet our decommissioning goals, to have the internal reactor hardware and activation products removed from the facility and the resins so we can go into bulk demolition of the facility.
How big is the facility? How many megawatts?
It's 65 megawatt electric reactor. It was nuclear regulatory license number 7, operated from I think 1963 to 1976. So it's a older reactor, smaller reactor, boiling water reactor. Small site, 14 acres total.
I don't know whether we're interested in what to expect as these plants start being decommissioned. And if the decommissioning is going to take place and all the B and C waste from the plants as they start being decommissioned is going to come here, that's one question we have. The other question has to do with compact, with in compact decommissioning of plants. And we haven't really been able to get our arms around those even a sense of that, of those numbers as we kind of read the TCEQ report about their ability to take the waste, or about your ability to take the waste lot.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to address that, Rod Balser. For the resins and irradiated hardware and things like that, these internals, the control rod blades, things like that, do get changed out periodically. So even though this is happening in a decommissioned plant, that will happen routinely throughout the industry at most of the power plants out there, particularly, resins are going to be very routine. So I think we'll see routine operating B&C waste come to our facility. We've got contracts with half the nuclear power plants out there, and that's growing as we go. So I think over time we'll get a little bit more, I'll say, stability and certainty in the forecast. As we start up with the shipment schedules, particularly, has been bothersome, as we've discussed with Ms. Morris and her committee. But I think as we get some of these kind of underfoot and underway, I think that helps with some of the consistency and certainty as we find the forecast. I do think we've got plenty of volume. We are limited to the 30% for imported waste as a portion of our license. The B&C waste is only 10% of that waste generated throughout the United States, so it's a small portion of that. We are cognizant of the limits, both in legislation on an annual basis as well as in our license in total, and feel very comfortable that we've got plenty of capacity to accommodate all of that.
Rob, say the 10% number, and it's 10% of the total low-level waste.
Yeah, so A, B, and C waste is 10% or less.
Are you talking about in terms of volume or curies?
Volume.
Volume. And the curies, it would be
a little different.
Yeah.
And we make use of the disposal sites at Clive and U.S. Ecology for our Class A waste in both the exempt and non-exempt categories. Again, I think was noted, this is our only option for the B and C waste.
And if I can, excuse me, Dave.
Sorry.
Let me just, and Rod, your contract's in place for the B and C stuff that's changed out periodically on an operational basis. Then I take it, then when a power plant goes into decommissioning, you just have, once it's removed from the plant, during the decommissioning process, there would be nothing behind it to take its place. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, that is correct. There wouldn't be anything once it's decommissioned. So once Humboldt has cleaned up all their resins and other Class B/C waste, we don't expect them to generate any more unless they find a mysterious barrel somewhere along as they decommission. But I'm not anticipating that.
Well, now, on the site, you probably have the greater than Class C waste that isn't spent fuel.
At this facility, we do have an IFC storage facility that has spent fuel in it and some GTCC waste at that location.
And as to the GTCC waste, what's the long-term prognosis for that?
Probably beyond my ability to comment. I believe that's tied up with, the federal government and a repository.
So that's basically tangled up with the
Yes.
fuel waste.
Yeah, they're separate, but the Department of Energy is responsible for greater than Class C, a separate repository for it, and the high-level waste, a separate repository for that, neither of which have been cited and identified to date.
How much are you kind of in a constant process of refining your estimates of what's out there?
Yeah, absolutely, and that depends on customer schedules, what their outage schedules are, what kind of cask availability is available. It depends on legislative limits as we go through this process in Texas. So we're constantly updating our schedule and forecast, and it changes week by week. We do know that there is a need in the industry. We do know that need is probably not going to go away, and we need to try to provide some kind of solution for it, because it is much better in a safe, secure, robust disposal facility than in storage across the United States in a variety of places. So we're happy to provide a solution for that. We have managed the volume in curies, and we think we've got a good handle on that. We understand we've got limits, and we will not exceed those limits. But our goal is to manage our business under those limits to provide that solution and safety for everyone who needs a problem solved.
More questions, Steve? I figure you have more questions. You just are choosing not to ask them at the present time. I anticipate that we'll be talking about this a good bit as we go through and gain more experience because of our job of making sure we have capacity available for Texas and Vermont generators.
Just to complicate it, Dick and Peter, if you take a look at Texas, for SDP 1 and 2, Comanche Peak 1 and 2, their licenses won't expire until the 2030 timeframe roughly because the reactors came online in 88 and 89. They have already filed with the NRC for extensions of those license agreements, most likely another 20 years. So that puts it out to 2050. And so, Rod, I know you have gotten data from those two entities about what it is. It certainly appears that on the horizon, Peter, you and I have talked about this a little bit, about their potential to construct 2 new units, STP 3 and 4 and Comanche Peak 3 and 4. God only knows if that's going to happen in light of what happened in Japan and all of that. So there's a lot of uncertainty associated with it. And I think the time frame is going to be even longer than what we had originally thought about how long these initial reactors that's in service now is going to further operate. So I think it's really incumbent upon the utilities to be able to provide to WCS their forecasted capabilities and what their expectations are relative to Class B and Class C waste. Over and above the low-level stuff, all the high-level stuff, of course, is with the DOE and what their game plan, and God only knows how that's going to end up being. So I think there's more uncertainty than what we really even know right now about trying to truly hone in on an accurate or close to accurate estimate about what the future is going to hold relative to curies, not necessarily volume, but curies down the line.
And I do think, as you look at curies, we are required to reserve 70% of those curies we're licensed for, and as we look at that, based on the decommissioning estimates for the the compact power plants, the 5 plants themselves, and all their operating waste and things, we'll probably have only 30% or so of those curies used by the compact. So there's a huge, significant margin of safety there for the curie side of that.
Used through what period of time, Rob?
Well, and the interesting part is the irradiated hardware and things like that decay rather quickly. It's got a lot of short-lived half-life isotopes, and so over basically a 7-year period of time, it'll eventually equilibrium will set in on the curies. And so the irradiated hardware will decay almost as fast as you take it in over a long period of time. So over the 2044, I guess, is how far we've projected out curies and decay factors and things, but it would even go further than that.
Okay.
So, and I take it the decay is somehow factored into the question of how close to your limits you are at any given.
Yeah, our license is on an as-decayed basis, and so that does feed into our performance assessment as we update our inventory. It's the inventory as it is at that day, which would be decayed. And so the reports we provide the Compact Commission, we have both data as manifested and as decayed. And as I look through the life to date through February, we've got approximately 127,000 curies as manifested and 122,000 total import and in Compact as decayed, so 5,000 curies have already decayed off in a 7-month period of time.
This is one of those questions that we're just going to continually have until we get more operating history behind us and until we look to see what the license terms and conditions are. But as I recall from prior questions, that the inventory that we take care of under our limits for out of compact waste and under the license are as shipped. And then the performance assessment as shipped and received and disposed of. And then the performance assessment may or may not, when that gets done, take into account the decay reaction, looking at basically the source term and exposures. Am I close to being right on any of that, Rod?
Partially. I'll say that...
You're very generous. I appreciate that.
We won't hand out any grades in class today, but the understanding we have is that the performance assessment, of course, is what drives our license, and the performance assessment is based on our inventory that decays, and the license limits we have, the 3.89 million curies is on an as-decayed basis as well, and that's what TCQ will evaluate is, your performance assessment inventory is now at X. Does that compare to your license limit?
Okay, this is getting us a little far afield from this particular application. It all bears on it because we've heard talk about the performance assessment. Maybe we'll come back and ask you about that when we bring you up here a little bit later.
Yeah, so I'll conclude by saying we wholeheartedly agree that PG&E should be accepted, and we hope that you approve this import application.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming to help us, Robert.
Could I ask for clarification on the clarification? As I understood it, you can only approve up to the limits and curies for the site. In other words, you can't, at the end of the operational license, approve more shipments based on the decayed volume?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay.
What we are acting on today, and that's all I'm here to do, is to act on an application for an importation agreement from out-of-compact generated waste to come to the site, and it's got certain characteristics associated with it, and that's what we're looking at.
Well, maybe I should clarify my attempted clarification then. You can't approve more than the capacity of the plant over the years, even if the total curies have decayed. In other words, you can't put more in after you get an assessment of what the decayed value in curies is.
I think you're asking a question that's properly before the licensing entity rather than the compact.
Okay. That was my first question. My second question was this. Don't you guys think it would be a good idea in terms of trying to figure out what you can approve and what you're going to be expected to approve to get an in-public report from both Comanche Peak and South Texas Project on what the prospects are for license extension, because that's going to have an impact on when you get shipments from the plants, and also in terms of decommissioning, but also get a report on what the current status of the license applications for the other units are at both STMP and Comanche Peak.
And I assume you would also like to ask us to request the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to weigh in on that.
That would be nice too. You should get an updated report on what you can expect to be in the pipeline over the next 20 years. And I think that would be a factor, whether they're likely to get the license extensions and whether they're likely to get the additional units.
Thank you for that comment. I'll just observe from my perspective. I expect that we will be asking a good deal more questions as we get more experience and we get further into the operational history of the site and see what we're actually dealing with. And we may know more about licensing amendments too at the time. But right now we're just trying to get through the first operational year.
Do you think that they would apply for a license and then say it was unlikely it would be granted?
There are some factors, particularly in the objections filed on the additional units and the license extensions at STNP, where you might want to get data from several sources, not just the applicant, but also the NRC, as the chairman suggested, because there are some things that make the license extensions and the expansion less likely, and also the operational performance of the existing plants might have, existing units might have an impact on how much and when you're going to receive material from them.
This is all very interesting, but we're talking about an application of Pacific Gas and Electric for shipment of waste from a plant that's out of service and is being decommissioned. So we have other issues in the future.
Just trying to suggest some things you can do in the future.
All right. John, I think you made a motion, and it was seconded, and we've now been having discussion. Is there any further discussion among commission members on the application of PG&E from Bold Bay? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the importation agreement as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. And then we're down to item 7D, RAM Services, application number 1-0029-00. And Mr. Salzman's keying up the computer in the appropriate place.
Mr. Chairman, the technical committee reviewed an application from RAM Services dated, received by the Commission February 1, 2013, was signed by the applicants January 30, 2013, and that application is number 1-0029-00. In this case, RAM Services is the applicant as a waste broker and waste collector for non-party low-level radioactive waste. I would note that they had previously applied for an authorization that we eventually rejected, and this is their sort of re-application with a new number. Similar to another application that we received, some of the materials that they're requesting for disposal, they acquired a number of years ago, and sort of they fall into that category of the forms that exist today did not exist in some cases when they received these materials. Fortunately, Lee and Audrey persevered and were able to go through and look at the documentation that RAM was able to provide, and we're satisfied that they have indicated where those materials are from and that there are no materials of international origin, though the paperwork and the documentation is not always exactly what we might get from an application for the materials were just received recently, if you will. The WCS did receive a letter from TCEQ dated February 14, 2013 that authorized them to dispose of the sealed sources Class C stable material. RAM Services is going to be brokering the waste from a very large number of states, and I'll read those now. That's Wisconsin, Mississippi, Maryland, South Dakota, California, New Mexico, Indiana, Connecticut, New York, Missouri, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, and Illinois. And those states represent the following compacts: the Midwest Compact, the Southeast Compact, Appalachian Compact, Southwestern Compact, the Rocky Mountain Compact, Atlanta Compact, and the Central Midwest Compact. And I would note that the states of New York and North Carolina are unaffiliated. Of that list, the two compacts that would ordinarily need to provide export authorizations would be the Southwestern Compact and the Rocky Mountain Compact. But my understanding is RAM Services is removing the sources that were from the Rocky Mountain Compact. So at this point, they only need authorization from the Southwestern Compact. My understanding is to date, they are still working with the Southwestern Compact for that authorization. So in this case, if we were to consider it, we would need to have I can't remember the term we used, a condition in that agreement that would only authorize those sources from the Southwestern Compact if in fact they obtain that export authorization. They are requesting for the first year of disposal, they are requesting 7.5 cubic feet and 11 curies total, and again, it's sealed sources. I would note that the application has indicated the waste is from small quantity generators, and based upon the requested volume and radioactivity, the Commission believes that the request should be totaled against our small quantity generator set aside. And to my knowledge, the applicant does not have access to another waste disposal facility for these materials. And the technical committee is recommending approval.
And this is for the first operational year?
That's correct.
Are there questions of Mr. Saltzman about his evaluation and report and analysis from the Commission members? Okay, Robert.
Again, these are questions from Seed Coalition. And I think probably the answers to some of them are going to go back to the problems with earlier paperwork from before the forms existed. But we'd like to ask how much of the waste is from industrial sources, how much is from academic research sources, how much from medical sources, and how much from government sources. And also where the waste came from and what radionuclides are included.
I've indicated the states that individual states that the sources came from. I understand your question about the breakdown of industrial versus medical, but in my opinion, that's not pertinent to our approval of this application.
Just for clarification, new applications that come in after the paperwork existed would tend to provide the answers to those questions because we'd know what particular sources the sealed sources came from and could make reasonable assumptions about whether they're medical or industrial.
I think it might be easier. I suspect that with enough homework, the Commission could probably try to figure that out. But again, I'm not sure. In my opinion, it doesn't add to the technical validity of what they're requesting.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, well, that was my question, John. Doesn't matter where the source comes from.
Well, you do ask for it now, so I assume there's some interest.
I'm asking John.
We asked, but even for an application where the sources were all received today, we still have not looked at how much volume or how many curies came from industrial versus medical versus the government. We've never asked for that kind of breakdown.
If the source is the same, does it matter who uses it?
If you have a cobalt-60 source, whether a hospital used it or the government used it, it really makes no difference.
Yeah, that's sort of what I thought, but I appreciate it.
It can be the same identical source except a different serial number. It would make no difference.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from any of the commissioners? John?
I make a motion that we approve the application from RAM Services. It's number 1-0029-00 for sealed sources, Class C. The waste form is stable. As far as the states, Lee, the only question I have is if they've removed Rocky Mountain. I'm not sure which state that.
New Mexico.
New Mexico. The states of origination of the waste would be Wisconsin, Mississippi, Maryland, South Dakota, California, Indiana, Connecticut, New York, Missouri, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, and Illinois.
And I take it the motion includes the contingency that any source of origin that's in the Southwestern Compact, the approval is
Approval for any sources from the Southwestern Compact are contingent upon receiving an authorized export permit from the Southwestern Compact. The volume of waste would be 7.5 cubic feet, and the curies would be 11, and that would be for a period of today through April 26, 2013.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any additional discussion among commission members? Questions? Dick?
When you say today through April 26, 2013, that they asked for 1 year, but you want to limit it?
Our indication is they will ship all that waste during the first operational year, so we can stop the authorization at the end of this first year.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody in the audience wish to comment? Seeing nobody. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition. The motion passes. Okay. Thank you, John. We've been going for, that concludes the last item, item 7. I'd like to, if y'all will indulge me, let's just take up the item 8, and then we'll take a short break. Consideration of and possible action on the following actions on proposed agreements for exportation. And this is the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. And normally these have been a notification to us. Lee, what's going on here? Clarify it for me.
Repeat your question.
They are asking us for an export permit. Is this radioactive mixed waste, or is this some other type of waste?
It's for animal carcasses and biological waste.
Okay. Thank you.
Different source.
That shows you why I was confused. And so, John, you're handling this one also.
Well, I would just indicate that this material is actually similar to other requests that we've received for export. Technically, I believe technically both wastes could be disposed at WCS's site, but the applicant is requesting export of these materials because there's really a better way to dispose of the materials, in this case animal carcasses and biological waste, rather than shipping as low-level waste. You have to increase the volume by adding lime and absorbent material and a lot of things, so there's really a better method to get rid of this material.
All right, thank you. Rise. Take WCS in support of this.
We are.
All right. Somebody wants to make a motion to approve this export application, unless there's some questions, other questions?
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the application for the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio for an export application to ship animal carcasses out for disposal.
It's actually animal carcasses and biological waste.
Animal carcasses and biological waste. Thank you. Is there any further discussion among commission members? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, show me as abstaining on this one. I serve on a medical foundation in San Antonio, which is how can I say this? We work with the UTS Science Center, and I'd rather not have a conflict of interest, so show me as abstaining.
All right. And we have 5 votes in favor, 1 abstention, and following the chair's normal practice, not voting, don't need to. This is 5 votes constitutes approval, so the motion is approved, 1 abstention, chair not voting, and the record will so reflect. And at this time, I'd like to take a short recess to get us up to stretch our legs, and then we'll go into reports. We're moving right along today. Thank you. We'll convene back here in about 15 minutes. Okay.
Go to the restaurant. I know I better. Good job, thank you.
I'll say this is the need, because there's maybe interest in these between now and June. Yeah, so anyway.
You're already through.
I am.
Well, it's out there, trying to get in. You sort of follow our media. You don't want Great. Glad you guys made an application to do that for you. This is how you take over the world.
Coffee? Coffee? Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just know they need coffee.
Me too.
Yeah.
It was 25,000.
Oh,
That's what I love. It's targeted for the and if we can't ship it, we just need to start building concrete around it. Yeah,
It's good to stay away.
I understand. It's funny to be here, Commissioner. How are you? Good to see you.
Oh, and the import petition is now gone from 49 to 25.
What's that?
Their import petition is now gone to 25 curies.
Yeah, Harvard filed it last night about 10 o'clock or so.
It'll be on the next agenda, and it is for 20,000. 2015.
25,000. It's for 2015.
2015 for 25,000.
The reason they're asking for it now is because if they can't find a pathway to Texas, then they just have to build some storage vaults up there.
And this is a Tellum plant?
It's a Fitzpatrick plant up in upstate New York.
We just didn't want to have it. That was the call that you couldn't be on. They just didn't want to cause a political uproar in DT, Vermont. Not speaking to you, but thank you for your
We're very sensitive about.
Why is it going to be an uproar in Vermont? I missed something over at Fitzpatrick.
I'm a little paranoid just because I was afraid somebody in Vermont may rise up and say, well, wait a minute, New Jersey's just using Vermont Yankees sort of as a vehicle so that they can get this facility open so they can dump all their waste in. What's going on? I just wanted to make sure.
Never mind that there was no connection between
Exactly. When I used to work in the legislature and I used to be general counsel for these committees, my boss was used to tell people don't confuse me with the facts. So that was sort of,
I think it's an important rule in the legislature. I don't think they'll be as low.
And I've learned in the past it's better to kind of do your right work ahead of time than just to drop something in and hope things will be okay.
Well, let's walk to the Capitol Grill. We love the Capitol Grill. If y'all want to walk and get something to drink, if not, I'll walk for you.
How you doing here?
I know. They're in here. What are you doing?
Are they?
Are you excited?
It's colder than outside.
No, not in your house.
Yeah, probably.
Plus.
Yeah, right. Chocolate fixes everything. Well, we've got plenty, so if you need more, get all you want. If I don't, I think if I don't. Yeah, I know. There you go.
You know,
Good for you. I live out here. I never know what Yeah, well, no, but I mean, after the, you do try to do later today, first thing in the morning, with the website based on the website today, so, you know what you say. Absolutely. Oh, believe me, we all were. I'm like, oh, come on, some pranksters out here. Everybody's like, that's a great idea, but anyway, the first one is definitely off, and the one is the unless they decide to read it, I can't imagine they would. Nobody wants to travel on Sunday, either on Sunday. That was kind of, that was a little soft. Yeah, nobody wants to travel. Easter Sunday. Thank you. You're welcome. I know it's going down. Yeah, she knows someone big insists she was here in Austin. Well, my husband loves it. No, but I used to receive teachers too. Oh, you do? Right, so, years and years. I was deputy director there for a while. When did your husband start here? 2005? He started after I left Ellison too. I worked in the Jim Phillips era. Jim Phillips was deputy of the lawyers. I was deputy of the program. You know Ray Winter? You know Ray Winter. Our Medicaid fraud. There's a lot of building going on, but you think. Doesn't have it very there wasn't much building. Yeah. Building is going on outside. When I worked overseas, when I was growing up, I was on the science side. So I was the science side, and I got to work with lawyers. Man, we had great lawyers. I mean, it was great as they were. I mean, and really dedicated. Exxon was great in there. Me, from New Jersey. You're studying for your latest exam.
Actually, we do have midterms next week, unfortunately.
Worked in administrative law at the AG's office when I started. And now she works at TC. She was back there. She was at the show the other day. She's a wonderful person. That's your home.
No problem. All over the side. And they'll take over and be two brothers.
They got it here. I would have told them. Yeah, there's one right there.
Hey, good, I got my Gatorade. Okay, all right. Thank you, though. It is freezing in here.
Somebody got to pick up 2 of those. That one's back.
I actually, but I wasn't sure that, I wasn't sure that it would be necessary to you have everything down securely accounted for in a spreadsheet.
Any questions? Yeah, sure, we'll answer.
Paid my dues. We got it right. We love to have you. That's right. Starting in 2014, the next cycle. So you have time to save up. So I'm just prepaid by about 4 years. You know, and I think we're decided to, that if you can already prepaid for a year, that you get it at the old rate. Yeah, no, Pete. I know Pete. They still work like that. Pete's not the treasury. Ed is eating Pete. Yeah, it doesn't want to keep up with you. Perfect. Vermont is missing. Does that mean we need to go visit them? In about 3 months. Well, I was going to say about 6 months. So we're 3, go to 6, that'd be 9.
Yeah, my dad's gonna go there before July, because it's Black season and then Black Friday.
Black Friday.
Yeah, it's bad.
September was not.
We're missing Vermont, so we're waiting a bit. It's still around somewhere.
their attorney asked if she could get me coffee, and I said that would just wake me up, so obviously she consented. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, once you finally get seated, it's the living room. You're right.
Did you find this interesting? It's mentioned in the contract. Is Dick getting a late breakfast?
Lunchtime here.
I did see him in the cafeteria.
Okay.
He was buying food.
Yeah, all right. Oh, well, I'm only a little hesitant to get started because I know he's got all sorts of questions for Charles and TCQ.
Oh, right.
Let me,
Deborah is your brother's keeper.
It's an obligation to the state. It's not an obligation. They can do it if they want to. Yeah, well, as soon as Mr. McGuire's ready, we'll go ahead and restart. Here he comes. All right. It's just too cool down here for you, Dick. That's what it is. All right. All of our attending members of the commission are back, and next on our agenda is receive a report from TCQ on several things, and a couple of things anyway. Mr. McGuire, welcome. Well, I noticed we're cutting down the list for you.
Thank you, Lee. I'm Charles McGuire, Director of Radioactive Materials Division at Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Good morning. The thing that is on my list is to talk to you about amendments. We do have Amendment 19 that has completed our process. It is headed toward notice. It will go to the Texas Register on the 6th of March. That means it will appear in the Texas Register on the 15th, and it's a 10-day notice period. So that amendment has several things in it that are changes. I would call most of them clarifications, things that as we've gotten into operating the site, things we've needed to clarify with the operator. I guess maybe the biggest thing is we took some of the things out of the license that related to the pre-construction and construction phase. We did leave some construction items in the license because we do think there may be a point where there will be some additional construction at the site, but we did pull the things out of the license that relate to the sale that's been built and is completed, and that's I think what I would consider the biggest single change in what we made. But certainly, if you look at it and you have questions or comments about the changes that we made, we'd be happy to discuss those with you when you've seen them. We are also working on Amendment 20, and Amendment 20 will deal with bulk disposal and with special nuclear material. That amendment, our processing time frame on it is just about complete, but we can't go to notice with it until we've completed the process on Amendment 19. The amendments are all sequential, and so we'll be waiting for 19 to complete its trip through our process before we file Amendment 20.
Thank you. Let me just ask, and I can look at the Texas Register. I get it when it's released in that form, and I'll look for that particular amendment proposal. Then Lee, we might just make that available, the notice available to the commission members when it's published in the Register, so that everybody can see it. I don't think that Dick or Peter normally looks at our Texas Register proposals, but it would be curious on this one in particular. I'm curious to see what it's going to say, and so when it's published in the Register, then we'll all know if we have comments or questions. We'll have 10 days to ask you about it.
And I think probably Lee is on the agency's delivery and may well have already received the amendment documents. It goes out whenever we enter the chief clerk's process.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you. And sometimes things happen between that and the time it's actually submitted for publication in the Register. I had personal experience with that. Okay. And you're still on track for June for your rate rule?
That's correct. We have an agenda date of June 5th. There are some backup filings that go with that, but we're on track there.
Okay. The only other question I have of you, and this is just a Bob Wilson question, I occasionally, more than occasionally, I look at captions of filed bills, and I saw several, and I'll talk about it for the Compact Commission when I talk to them about things that are going on for us. But is there anything that I don't normally keep up with the details of TCQ? I noticed that there's some things about requiring you all to do some studies or analysis for proposed rule changes and things like that. Is there anything else that of particular interest that might fall over and impact us?
I don't think we're tracking more than a couple of bills. I think you probably know about those that would relate to my division. I have some that deal with uranium mining. I have some that deal with some injection wells in the protective portion of the Edwards that are in the saline area that we're tracking. Now, the agency, of course, is tracking an extremely large number of bills, and as you know, we don't lobby, so.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that. I was just wondering if I look at the captions, if something peeks out at me, I might read it, but I'm only curious for this group as to things that might impact or bleed over into things you do with us.
Okay. Well, and if you would like, I'd be happy to communicate with the bills that we're tracking that we think might have some interplay between us and y'all and the legislature.
Trust me, I'm not interested in everything you guys might be tracking.
Okay. But Lee might not be either.
Well, she has a wider universe than I do, so maybe she would be. But those are really all my questions for Mr. Blair. Anybody else on the commission have any?
Can we open a dumb question period?
Yes. Obviously, I've had it open all morning.
I read the TCEQ capacity report, and frankly, I didn't quite understand the bottom line. And what I'm wondering is, are you saying that there is sufficient capacity in the compact facility now to take the waste that you anticipate will come in, or are you saying that there is insufficient capacity? I mean, just a general conclusion. I couldn't tease it out of your report.
Well, the capacity study shows the estimate that was provided to us by the compact generators. Most of that is from the three utilities that are in the party states. I think if you look at the bottom line in the tables that are presented, you will see that during the first phase, I will call it 2024, the number of curies is far less than what the license total would allow, but the number of cubic feet becomes crowded, if you will, and so there's then as you get to 2044. Again, the number of curies, there seems to be plenty of capacity within the license, but the number of cubic feet, there are more cubic feet estimated as needing disposal than is currently authorized under the license.
Should that be of concern to the compact generators?
Well, I think most of that burden probably rests on y'all's shoulders. I think what we know about those numbers is a lot of that volume, and I'm talking about cubic feet, is coming from Class A waste. And what we see happening is volume reduction in the processing of Class A waste, and we see some exporting going on. And so I think if you make if you're willing to look at some assumptions about what might experience volume reduction, what might be exported, then I think you would probably be less concerned about the the fact that there's an estimate that there's more cubic feet going to need to be disposed of at the facility than is currently in the license.
Well, I don't think there's any secret that we're all kind of seeing Class A waste be diverted, at least for now, as long as there's a place to divert it to. Whether that's from in-compact generators or out-of-compact generators, obviously we're not even, I don't think anybody's seriously entertaining bringing Class A in from out-of-compact. And so the only question is whether all the export petitions would be granted for in-compact Class A. But I mean that, I will tell you that I'm assuming that as a general rule, Class A will be exported unless there comes a point where there's no place elsewhere to put it, in which case I suppose, you know, we might have to change our attitude on that. But supposing therefore that we limited the imports to Class B and C, which is apparently what we're doing, and we allowed the export of Class A as a routine matter, then do you think that there is sufficient capacity long-term in the facility as these plants, you know, decommission and all that?
Well, we've looked at several scenarios that assume a percentage to be export. We looked at 25%, 50%, 75%. We've looked at percentages of the A waste being volume reduced. Again, 75%, 25%, 50%. Working those scenarios, and they're just arbitrary selections of some numbers to look at, but that clearly demonstrates that we can operate the site within the current licensed volumes if as much as 50% of the Class A waste is either exported or volume reduced over time, and of course then there's combinations of the two, and so we don't really have a crystal ball that will tell us what the marketplace will choose to do. We've been told on several occasions that the requirements for the MCCs to put the Class A waste in is also a deterrent to using the facility to dispose of Class A, and hence we're been working with WCS on the bulk amendment so that we can use a little bit more effectively the space that's available. I think that would also make a big difference in terms of being able to talk about having adequate space to deal with all of the Class A waste in particular. That the bulk of the cubic feet, roughly 98% in terms of what we got told by the utilities, is Class A.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you saying is that it would be okay to take some Class A, and you're still not going to be running up in capacity as long as you forego maybe 50% of it or something like that.
Well, I think yes, I'm saying that. I think also I'd want to add into that mix a lot of the volume, the cubic foot volume, is coming from the numbers we were given for decommissioning. In terms of the operating waste being generated, even the cubic foot volumes, they are relatively small compared to what's licensed. So the real pressure on loading up the boat, if you'll let me use that expression, the real pressure comes when we start to do the decommissioning. and those are somewhat unknown at this point as to when they might happen. But what we're trying to do is remove the institutional impediments that might be in place for folks to do the volume reduction that we'd like to see, and that will certainly help. That will certainly help make more efficient use of the space that's built.
What do you think is the appropriate means of assuring that the compact facility isn't overcommitted or overused, filled up too early?
I think the most appropriate tool that we have is sort of constant vigilance on how much is actually coming to the hole, how much is being requested to be shipped in, and with certainly a perspective that considers what might need to come at some point in the future in terms of decommissioning waste from the utilities. And so I think you watch it carefully, and here on the front end, where we haven't even finished the first year, it's hard for us to say how much volume reduction we will see, how much export we will see. A lot of that is market driven and well outside what we would ever want to regulate. And so I think if we do our job appropriately to try and make the operation of that space that we've got licensed as efficient as we can in receiving A, B, and C waste, and we watch it carefully as we go along, I think we have the safeguards in place to say, well, maybe we're putting too much into the hole at some point, and we want to save space for the utilities. But I think it's pretty reasonable to assume we'll see significant volume reduction, and we will probably even see significant export of the A waste, and that takes all the pressure off the space in the hole.
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to just say a few things, Dick, and I think about the same thing that you do. And one of my problems when I conceptually think about this is the underlying assumptions that go into it. Because the underlying assumptions are that, first of all, we have a static system of classifying waste. And we have to assume that we do. But I'm not sure that that's a valid assumption or how we'll react. Secondly, and I've noted this before, with respect to export of Class A, it has the benefit of opening up volume in the site for other materials that come in there. But it has the unfortunate distraction, if somebody's paying attention to money that might go to Andrews County or the state of Texas, of reducing that amount of money. So, and who knows what kind of thing that's going to produce for us. Second, the other thing that I struggle with is I don't know what the market is going to do. I have confidence that the utilities are going to look at when they get ready to forecast a shipment and figure out whether it's cheaper for them to ship it and get rid of it, if that's better, or cheaper for them to keep it and manage it themselves under rules that they might have available. And that's not necessarily true for Vermont, but I expect that would be true for Texas, the Texas utilities, because after all, they do it now. And so I look at them as saying that's going to be an economic decision. And so the other factor is how fast we consume the capacity, is what the charges are associated for disposal at the facility. And when I think about all these things, I think that, okay, we have to deal with the reality for assuring that there's capacity available, unlimited for Texas generators, and million cubic feet that we estimated for Vermont, or non-host party state generators. And so that's cubic feet, that's not curies. And so the other thing I think about is the curie limits and how we watch those, and then I put into that equation what the legislature did in Texas for its site, which is this site. It had the obligation to develop a site, and it chose to do it, but it has the state of Texas has ultimate responsibility for that. When I think about all those things, I could see that as a commission, when we look at our import rules and our export policies or anything else we want to look at, we probably should start working towards a matrix where we look to see, okay, at what point and what factors do we consider to trigger a concern or reaction on our part. Or, for example, it might take the point in our instance of saying, okay, if you want to import, you have to process in this particular way. Or if you want to export, we really don't care, but we might want to do some other things. And so I'm thinking that I don't have any experience with mathematical computations with multiple variables, but that's exactly what we have here. And so I'm thinking that we'd build a matrix and start looking at the factors that we want to consider as we move forward. I don't think anybody thinks seriously that in the first year or 5 years that we're going to have a significant problem, but we don't know when we're going to reach it, but we ought to know what triggers an alert in our mind where we have to start dealing with things. And I expect that we'll get into that when we revisit our import rules, some of it, to start talking about it. So I'm going to encourage you to start thinking about those triggers you think we ought to look at and consider, and what they ought to be, and how we ought to work them in. And it could be that in some instances one is more important than another. It could be that they work in combination or against each other. I don't know how it's going to work. But to me, it's a multiple variable problem. And I'm just stating my own views. And Charles, I don't know if those are echoed in what y'all see or not.
Well, it's multiple variables, and all of them are estimates and very much unknown as you look out into the future for lots and lots and lots of years. And so I would just reiterate, I think the strength in the system is you get to look at it with every import petition, you get to look at it with every license amendment. I think our vigilance is the thing that makes it safe and secure, and I think everybody's heart in the project is to make sure there is space and curie amounts for the party state waste, and in the meantime try and use the facility very effectively for the disposal of some other B&C waste that's out there that needs to come out of the storage building and be safely stored in the vault in Andrews County.
Did I confuse everything with my suggestions that we all start thinking about this?
The confusion is all mine.
Obviously not. I'm also confused because I don't even know how to. I know what thing. I have a feeling. I have some concept of factors we need to look at, but how they should be applied and when are questions that I don't know the answers to, and I haven't even started thinking about, to tell you the truth, except conceptually, to try to design something that we say, okay, when we get to, if we used up 30% of the curies, then maybe we ought to start thinking about what we're doing, or is it some other number, or is it greater or lesser? And I don't know how that works with, and I'm not sure that WCS can help us any, because they're just starting out too. They have better information, but they're dependent, as we've learned, on the intentions of people who sign up with them to actually go ahead and follow through with those agreements. And Rod, maybe you can help us on some of this, but you're coming up next, so you can see that we're going to probably carry on this conversation with you. All right? Any other thing for Mr. McGuire? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Charles. WCS. It's amazing how that works.
Rod Balzer with WCS. We are, the report going through the agenda, we have disposed of approximately 13,900 cubic feet and 127,100 curies as of February the 28th, so yesterday. We have received waste from the South Texas Project and Vermont Yankee, as well as UT and other compact generators, so we're excited about that. The in-compact amounts were 3,100 feet and 720 curies out of that total. TCQ did a good job of the licenses coming up and the amendments and the status there. And I think we talked earlier about importation and how much curie availability we had and things, so I think we've already covered that topic as well.
I'm sorry. You moved a little fast for me on that. You say you've received more than 13,000 cubic feet?
We have received through February 28th 13,900 feet.
And then
127,100 curies.
And then did you say compact generators or
compact generators?
3,100?
Yeah, 3,100 feet and 720 curies out of those totals.
Okay, thank you. So the non-compact generators are by far the lion's share of those totals.
Yes, they are. To go ahead and dive into the capacity, I will note that the TCQ capacity report was as generated, so it did not have compaction and volume reduction and things like that in it. I agree with the results that basically the vast majority of the volumes would be Class A, compactable type waste. Most of that is being exported. If it wasn't exported, it would be compacted just for disposal economics. It would need to be for disposal in our facility. We do have an amendment request into TCQ for bulk or non-containerized disposal. This would greatly improve the efficiencies for decommissioning waste, which is the largest volumes of waste and will happen at the end of the life of the facility, as well as some of the Class A waste. And typically, if waste has to go into a concrete canister, we probably have 4 times as much air space, physical space taken up than if it isn't in a concrete canister. So it is a large benefit, I guess, just from a physical capacity standpoint. I'll also note, I think most of you have been out to the site, and we have a rather large site, and we do have the ability to physically expand as needed. A lot of the decommissionings, as we talked about, would be 20, 44, or 20 years later than that. And so there is ample time to obtain amendments if needed and physically expand the space of the site. As we looked through the TCQ disposal capacity report and looked at those as-generated numbers, used a volume reduction of approximately 3-to-1 for the Class A DAW processing operational type waste. We determined that there would not be any issues on the disposal side to receive all of that within that 70% of our license limit. There's basically unlimited capacity for volumes and curies. The capacitor report actually had lower curie numbers than we had originally developed, so from that standpoint as well, I think we've got more than adequate capacity for the compact generators.
And that's your present capacity?
Yes, as licensed without expansion.
More questions?
No, it would be useful, if you could, maybe before each meeting, give us a rundown of those numbers and how they, changed from when?
Sure.
Well, maybe not changed, but what they are, the totals are.
Yeah, well, I can do that.
Rod, one of the interesting things that's happening, I'll jump in here, is that we had that application from PG&E for importation of waste for a reactor that's being decommissioned. How much will we actually learn from that process that we don't know now about what might have to come to your site associated with decommissioning at the time that takes place?
We've got that as well as Zion and a couple others that are undergoing decommissioning, and I think each plant's a little bit different depending on their size and what kind of plant they were and things like that, how they went into decommissioning. And so I think, as we learn about each of these plants and the different types, whether they're a PWR or BWR or what they are, I think we learn a little bit and understand from the industry more as we go through. But I think we have a fairly good feel for it, and I think we understand that there's probably a market out there for around 350,000 curies a year for waste that would like to come to WCS. I think that waste is still less than 50,000 cubic feet, but so not just from decommissioning, but just across the industry with the various outages, decommissioning waste put into there. There may be event projects that would skew that, but I think there's, definitely some history and market data and trends and things to look at. Those waste volumes have been minimized over time as different disposal facilities go offline or different technologies come online. And so as we work through that, it then gets to, what the schedules are, what kind of shipping's available, what our constraints are, and how that all gets managed. And so we are, there's a lot of factors to juggle and balance through the equations, and we're doing our best for that. But at the end of the day, we definitely do not see any kind of detrimental impact to the compact generators where they would not have space or curies available.
One of the things that has always impressed me is when the compact was drafted in 1993, which is now 20 years ago, the realities of the practices associated with the waste industry are different, were different then than they are now. But we're dealing with that language that we had drafted from 20 years ago. And one of our struggles is always going to be how we fit the modern practice into the concepts that were the assumptions that went into the original compact when it was drafted, because it created a finite view of the world in the sense that they anticipated decommissioning at a certain time, and the decommissioning may take place now outside the scope of that initial review, which for us was through the year 2045. And so we're going to, from my perspective, we're going to need the involvement certainly of the site operator and TCQ and the generators and others about how to, that's why I say I keep thinking about a matrix to say what is it that we have to be concerned about and what triggers should we use to determine when we need to, say something needs to be done in this sense, because you're operating a site that Texas has agreed to develop to make available to Vermont. And our primary goal is to make sure that it's there for Texas and Vermont generators and out of compact generators to the extent that they can use it, great. But we still have that concept. And so I need for everybody to start thinking about that kind of a thing. And I know you guys are doing it, but you do it from a business perspective. And we've got a little bit different perspective. So with that, I'll shut up. And I don't know if, Peter, you want to?
Well, just one question, Rod. We're seeing something now we haven't seen since the 1990s, operating plants closing early, Kewanee, Crystal River, maybe others that have at least been mentioned in the trade press as possibilities. How much of a change does that produce in your estimates of possible business?
Well, and there's an expectation that some plants are going to decommission over a period of time, and none of these decommissionings are rapid projects where all the decommissioning is done in a one-year period. These will be 5 to 10-year decommissioning type projects, so it won't be a glut or anything. And the Class B, C type waste that we would most typically receive out of one of those decommissioning projects are fairly minimal compared to the rest of the decommissioning. So I'm not anticipating that they'll have a dramatic influence on the volumes and curies that we're requesting.
Help me think just a little more about that. So the B and C volumes from a plant that's being decommissioned compare how with the annual B and C volumes if that plant continues to operate?
So let's assume that there's an operating plant A, and they were typically generating 5 liners a year or something, for just operational waste. When they close, they probably have 5 liners of waste that they're going to generate because they've filled up their filter system or whatever it is, and so then those would probably come to us. But I don't anticipate that it would be order of magnitude more or anything like that.
So the internals.
The irradiated hardware would be a different aspect of that, and it would generate more waste. And I couldn't tell you personally off the top of my head. Some of our guys may be able to, but we have periodic outages where they change some of those out anyway, and it's only a portion of them. But I don't see these as kind of market moving type aspects where it would suck up all the capacity we have.
Anybody else?
We're thinking.
I'm glad somebody is. All righty. Rod, thank you. I don't think that there's anything else that we have for you right now, but we keep talking about this problem. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future. All right. That takes care of item 10. Item 11. Mr. Lee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, if you take a look under tab 19, you should see a draft of comments that the Rules Committee that originally took a look at the first part of 2012, the import rule. John Salzman and Dick Saudick served with me on that committee, Mr. Chairman. You were involved in the majority of all the meetings that we had. SEED had filed some late comments that we had said we would comment to, written comments. What you have under tab 19 is a background page and then the responses to SEED's comments that they had drafted, and we had told SEED that we would respond to those in writing, and we have. The draft is in front of you. I don't want to read those to you. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is maybe give the commissioners a moment to take a look at it. I'm prepared on part of the Rules Committee, and I'll have Dick if he wants to make comments, and John if he wants to make comments relative to this draft response to SEED, to make a motion on the Rules Committee part, and hopefully get the commission to approve this.
All right. Have all the commissioners had an opportunity to look at it? Does anybody have any questions that they care to ask? If not, I'll ask Mr. Lee to proceed. Is that all right? Peter, you have any questions?
No problem.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the commission approves the background and subsequent responses that's contained under tab 19 for the commission to approve, to submit to SEED, and then to have as part of our records for the low-level waste commission.
All right. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion among the commission members? Hang on, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. It passes, and we'll send the letter out to the SEED Coalition responding to the comments that's required on our statutes. Texas statutes. And that's item 11. Item 12, Chairman's report. Well, I don't have a lot. I will say that one of the things that has been occupying me has been, I've been attending legislative committee hearings. Most of those have so far been concerned with financing, and because of the fact that the money goes into the state, it comes back to us under an appropriation, so we participate in that process. And so we've had a couple of hearings, one on the Senate side and one on the House side. And I will say also, and I've got them with me, that I do watch legislation, and there have been a couple of bills introduced, and some of them are interesting, but two specifically with respect to the Compact Commission are that were filed, and I'll get them wrong, I'm sure, but Representative Darby filed a House Bill 1653 relating to operations of the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Facility, and then there's a subsequent bill that's been introduced by Senator Seliger that was also filed earlier, I think this week, and I have a copy of that bill somewhere around in my stack of papers here. What's the bill number, Lee? 791. And Senator Seliger's bill is a much more lengthy bill, and I haven't actually analyzed each of them. It has to do with increasing the carry capacity that could be disposed of on an annual basis, operational year basis at the site. It would be continuously, basically 220,000 carries, the same way as it was the first operational year. That's Representative Darby's bill. There are some other things. There are some definitional changes and clarifying some things on the TCQ side, which is in Chapter 401 of the Health and Safety Code about people entitled to actually request hearings, being residents of the state of Texas. A few other things, but I haven't analyzed either of the bills. The Senator Seliger's bill is considerably longer and addresses other things, and again, I haven't studied it in detail. But we'll be glad if anybody's curious on the commission to make those, send you a copy of the bill if you don't otherwise know how to access them. And it's early in the process. They're just getting started, and so we don't know for sure how they will develop during the time the legislative session goes along. For those of you who are not that familiar with the Texas legislative session as in other legislative sessions, it's a remarkable thing to participate in and watch and follow as it develops, and it just requires attention. We've heard about possibly a couple of other bills, but I'm not sure that they've been introduced yet, so that's where we are. Secondly, I wanted to congratulate each of the members of the Compact Commission. Another thing that happens is, and this is again happened because of legislative changes in the last session, which is in 2011, that our terms were ended and we were all then appointed in Texas, the Texas commissioners, to stagger terms, 2, 4, 6 years. And because of the new terms, we had to go through confirmation, and all 6 of the Texas commissioners have now been confirmed by Senate action. So you're stuck with us for a while until our terms end. So good wishes to all of and our fellows from Vermont. You now know that 2 of the terms expire at the end of August. Mr. Lee and Mr. Doyle. Theirs are the first expirational terms, and they will expire August. And the way that works in Texas is once you qualify and assume in office, like this, you continue to serve until your successor is appointed and qualifies. So just because your term ends doesn't mean you get out from under the obligations to have to continue to help us out. So everybody knows that. That's just the way it works here. Okay. I did mention that I also went to the Radiation Advisory Board meeting, and I've been going to those. And the Radiation Advisory Board in Texas is like the Science Advisory Board of EPA or one of those other things that exists to give, it exists, I've forgotten how many members there are, Richard, 18 or 21? 18. And it exists to advise the state of Texas, in particular different agencies, on things radiation, because they know that most people are not conversant in those things. So it typically looks at rules and programs and considers all sorts of things from the Railroad Commission, the Department of State Health Services, the TCEQ, and now they've started including us and a few other folks regularly attend on that. And so I give a little report about our activities, and that's where Ken Krieger, who is a member of that group, was mentioned the fact that we were talking about the question of when waste was becoming a waste, and tossed that out generally for the people on the Radiation Advisory Board to help us work through. And so when we get to that point, well, I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of that. Let me see. Fiscally, we had a couple of hearings, like I said, under the Senate Finance and the House Appropriations Committee. I knew I'd get it wrong. I don't normally hang around those committees. It scares me. But we did it this time, and as nearly as I can tell, we don't have a lot of problems because our funds come out of a fund set up for us that comes out of another fund, Fund 88, into which all sorts of money goes, including the money paid for by Vermont. And we thank you. And so there are transfers going back and forth, and there weren't any questions on the Senate side. There were a few questions on the House side, mainly having to do with some items in our budget, and we'll be scheduling that later this year. The budgetary thing that they were particularly interested in was travel, and they asked us why we didn't have meetings teleconferencing, and I was happy to tell them we'd asked that question ourselves, and we've been advised by the Attorney General's office, who act as our attorneys, that we could not do that under current Texas law. So I have noted that this is one of those things that I've looked at, that there are a couple of bills going through the legislature that have been introduced this session that would generally allow for teleconferencing. But I enjoy getting together with you guys. I hate to see you in. So it's lots of fun to do it from you this way. I did sign the agreement with our auditor, our CPA firm, and they're supposed to, I don't know whether it got sent out yet. I assume it hadn't been sent out yet. Oh, okay. I need to sign the cover letter. I drafted a cover letter too. They had proposed starting to do the audit work for us about the 18th of March, and they said it would take a little longer after that, and then we'd get a report from them. And the report is just on our money coming in and going out, and they need to get familiar with all the things we have, because this is going to be the first one that they've been doing, and then after that we'll get that done on an annual basis. We voted last meeting to send a report, the annual report, and that we had a completed draft that had been looked at. Dick, you said that you wanted to see if there were some special things that could be added for Vermont to modify the report, and I expect that we'll get Dick and I will work on that and try to see if it gets done so we can send that out and fairly quickly, and then we'll see what comes next with activities that I take care of, and Milton takes care of them locally. We're lucky. We live close enough to where when somebody has a problem, they call us up, say, come to Austin and do this. So we're trying to leave John, you, and you, Linda, a little more freedom not to have to come here. At the same time, Milton and I are generally here. so we could do it that way. And that's just about everything I think I have to say, unless somebody has some questions of me. But everything, y'all are so great. It really is fun to work with you guys. And Lee and Audrey, thank you. Everything's running smoothly. And we're getting lots of help from our Attorney General's representatives, and we thank them for that. So and as you can tell by this meeting, we're going along fairly rapidly. And so, Lee, you're next.
My report will be really, really, really brief. The only thing, most of what I would cover is embedded within our agenda items, and then the chairman covers a lot of what we do. So the only thing I have left to mention to you is that the two of the bills that the chairman mentioned, Senate Bill 791 and House Bill 1653, we were asked by the Legislative Budget Board to submit a fiscal analysis of those two bills. What that basically means is how much will it cost state government for us to implement those bills. And the good news is, looking at the language in those, the answer is nothing. They are of no fiscal impact to us. The second thing, probably the biggest project we have going over the next couple of weeks, is to research print shops to ensure that we get a print shop that's cost effective and prints the entire document. And the second thing we're going to do is order space heaters that we can bring to this room for these meetings. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Ng or Audrey? Do you have anything to add? Okay. The next item is changes in dates and locations of meetings for the remaining fiscal year. For those of you who don't know, we had originally scheduled an April 1st meeting in discussions among ourselves initiated by Ms. Ng because of some realizations about what that date was other than being April Fool's Day. We decided to cancel that meeting, if I'm correct.
Yes, so that meeting has been canceled. That way a number of folks didn't have to travel on Easter Sunday as well, other than being April Fool's Day.
And are we looking at other meetings? Reschedule that meeting, or what then would be our remaining meeting?
Right now, what we have on the books for meetings is June 6, 2013 and August 8, 2013. So our next meeting officially is not until June 6th. There is in having informal discussions prior to this meeting, there are a myriad of opinions as to what extent a meeting is needed in April or a meeting in May. So if somebody feels like there should be a meeting before June 6th, you might want to invite that comment.
August
8th.
June 6th and August 8th.
Correct.
Yes.
Ryan Williams with WCS. The April 1st meeting, I guess, did get canceled, but there was a import application submitted by TVA that we will want to be considered for the April timeframe if that's possible. Also, we expect 2 more companies to submit applications in March that will be deemed received by April 1st that will probably also need to be heard in May's timeframe as well.
Well, let me ask them, do you need an April meeting to help with carry consumptions in the first operational year, or will this be a second operational year application that just got received? I understood it was received last night.
Correct. I believe it's for operational year 2. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes. Okay. So if we needed to have a meeting, then you're really looking at May. Is that right?
Does that support shipping schedules, Brian?
I have an 8/120 Bravo shipping cast scheduled for end of April all the way through beginning of, end of April all the way through May, and then I have a break, and then I go back in and ship in July. So I have one, April 30th is my first reservation for shipping. We have a contract with WCS to go ahead and store on site, so, whatever you guys want to do, I'm okay with.
Well, okay, and this gets to a question that I asked last time. I'm kind of curious about, you say you have a shipping schedule reserved. You reserve those for a block of time. You get the cask or whatever your shipping is at a beginning date, and you have to use it up by some end date.
That is correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
And so if we want to authorize shipment for disposal as opposed to importation and storage, then you would need us to act so you could actually do that during the time your cask is already scheduled
that is
and
correct.
available to you.
That's correct.
And that time period is April 1st?
April 30th. April 30th for year 2. I have one right out of the gate.
Okay. All right. What does that mean? Do you need it? Or do you not? You know, right now we're not scheduled to meet until June 6th, and that means if you could use the cask, you'd have to use it for storage, and would that put you in a different contracting position with WCS?
It would. We actually have a contract with WCS to send our waste for storage, and I believe those contract terms have very specific dates when they actually have to turn around and dispose of it. Thereafter, they take it in for storage. So I'm not sure what that looks like. Contract folks leave me out of that mess, which is good. But so once we actually ship for storage, I'm not sure what that date is when they have to dispose of, but I know that there is some dates in that contract for that.
Well, I'm thoroughly confused now. Maybe Lee, you can lead us through this because we're now looking at whether we need a meeting prior to the June 6th meeting.
What we have on the books, if we were to have a meeting in April, currently what we have in-house, there are no amendments in-house for that yet, but usually they come in later, and there are no export petitions. So currently, as of today, all we would have on the April meeting would be the TVA import agreement.
And that would be for the second operational year, right?
And it would be for the second operational year with shipments that would start the very end of April.
Sure.
And then my understanding, there is a prediction, and that application is in-house. We also have another application in-house, an import application from Entergy from the state of New York. That would also potentially be on that agenda for April 2nd. So I stand corrected, there are two. And then it appears that there may be two more that would come in that would be deemed received April 1st, and they would be on a May meeting or a June 6th meeting. So it just sort of depends on how important it is to TVA to come into Austin in April for this, or how important it may be to Entergy New York as to if that meeting should be in April or if it could potentially wait till sometime in May.
Go ahead.
I don't mean to be narrow-minded on this, but it seems to me that unless there's a pretty good reason to schedule our meeting in order to accommodate imports, and I haven't quite heard one yet, I don't think. I mean, if there's some real urgency, that may be one thing, but we don't, exist just to kind of jockey our schedule around to accommodate imports. Concerns of the compact members might be somewhat different. It seems to me if a Texas utility needs something from us, or a Vermont utility, I can see maybe accommodating somewhat. But do you really need us to meet between now and June in order to?
Well, I can tell you the issue that TVA has is purely contractual between us and WCS. Nothing. I mean, the import petition. I have a shipping cask that is booked, and they're telling me the 8120 Bravo shipping cask. If I don't take this in April, I don't get it until September, and who knows if I get it after that. So the shipping schedules are pretty tight for the 8120 Bravo shipping casks. So if we don't start shipping right away, we could lose the shipments that we want to send to WCS, which would then affect the Curie allocation. So for me, I mean, I don't need it right away. I can ship for storage. I would prefer not to, but I understand, you know, because they don't take title to the waste until it's dropped in the hole. So, you know, that's my waste sitting
You mean
on
Texas,
there.
the state of Texas does.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's my waste sitting on a pad, you know, in Texas. So
The other side of that, and Brian's correct, yes, we do have a contract for storage. With these type of shipments and the high dose, you have to do second handling. You get extra exposure for site personnel and folks like that. That's one reason we like stuff to go direct to disposal rather than having to handle and actually, we actually have to ship it over to ourselves, to our other license. So it's another shipment that has to happen.
What about energy? Do they have a problem with their import?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, Derek Seal with Entergy. My understanding as of this morning is that we would prefer to have something done before June the 6th, but I think we can live with June the 6th from the interaction I've had this morning.
I will observe that we can call a meeting if we need to, and if the commissioners would be available. We would need to have at least 5 to create a quorum and to act. It would take a unanimous vote then of 5 of us who would be there if to do that. But we can certainly schedule a meeting depending upon availability of the additional commissioners. We're talking about future meetings now. So if something does happen, Lee can get on the phone or email and send messages to everybody and see what the preferred schedule is. And so it's really a function of, and I don't have, like I said before, I'm here almost every day, so it doesn't matter to me. I just, for those of you who live in Vermont and other places and have busier lives than I do, this seems to be about it's taken over my life. And so if you have some preferences, let me know.
Is there a way we could revise the June 6th meeting and maybe move it up and eliminate the June meeting?
We can always do it. It's ever the will of the commission. But that said, one of the reasons, as a reminder, that we had set a meeting in early June was so that we could begin whatever we needed to begin right away associated with the legislative session.
Right.
And we'll also have, I think, our annual rule revisit from our rule that's required also on that agenda.
Yep.
At least those 2 things.
Right. I remember about the legislature I did.
So, well, basically, I don't see a reason right now to have the meeting before June the 6th. But if there is a reason that becomes apparent or if there's an emergency, I certainly understand this shipping cask problem. And we're just trying to figure out how to, we're all learning, and I said that the first operational year, we're trying to figure out what we need to do to help this out, both for WCS and for the generators who have agreements with us, as well as the Texas and Vermont generators, to figure it all out. But given the expression that there is no immediate urgency, we'll just take this into the factor. We're all learning, and so we now know how far in advance we need to come in with some of these forecasts and see what we're doing. So it looks to me like our next meeting is going to be June the 6th, unless there's a reason, somebody has strong reasons to say otherwise.
That makes sense to me. I mean, outside of the first, whatever it is, couple of weeks of April, I think we can get here if we need to. So,
yeah.
We can find time if events require, but I think at the moment I agree with you.
All right. So we'll leave it for right now. The next scheduled meeting will be June the 6th, unless there's a change and somebody says, well, I need to have something done, and then there'll be a poll of the commission to see if we can come up with a date that would possibly work for us before then. If that's all right with everybody. All right. So the next meeting would be June the 6th, and then August 8th. In that August 8th, we're looking at doing our budget and a few other things and going into the fall and go from there. So is there anything else? anybody care to bring up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. One thing, we never got a report from Commissioner Bradford or Commissioner Sodick on the weather in Vermont. I almost forgot. I'm getting old and it's cold this morning. My brain was freezing when I was walking this morning, so how about a 30-second weather report?
You don't know from cold.
I haven't actually been in Vermont since last Sunday.
The weather in Vermont stinks these days. It's gray and it's kind of 1 degree either side of freezing. It's not wildly cold, but it's just kind of raw and trickle of snow, but nothing that you can really make a snowman out of. And so it's just, I'll tell you, it's a real pleasure to come down here this time of year.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't move to have 2 meetings.
2 meetings, yeah.
Thank you, Dave. If you'd offered us one next week, it might have been different.
Oh, yeah. Anytime in March.
All right. I think that's everything. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right. Motion been made and seconded. I assume we're all in favor, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation today. And I will note that this may be one of the shorter compact commission meetings we've ever had.